I could only take responsibility for what I knew about. I exercised my due diligence. I've given amazing leadership to this agency.
Amazing. Right. And then what did he learn before the whole CNN event where he was destroying the NRA and destroying Dana Lash for sticking up for the NRA? What did he know about what his officer didn't do that day? That is the sheriff of Broward County defending his actions by saying, I was fine, my people weren't.
Right. Let's bring in Dan Bongino. He's a Florida resident, former New York City Police Department officer, former Secret Service guy, NRA TV contributor, and the host of the wildly successful Dan Bongino Show. Dan, I know you've heard that there are a lot of people who would like to see the Broward County Sheriff, Scott Israel, step aside because they feel his department did not connect the dots. There were a lot of warning signs, and then the day of the shooting, at least one of the guys was outside, wouldn't go in. There was one suggestion they might have been waiting for a SWAT team, but nonetheless, a lot of people are saying they dropped the ball.
Yeah. Steve, the sheriff has to go. He has to resign. I don't see any way he can credibly function in that role anymore. Now, listen, I've done a lot of commentary on this show on police-related matters. I spent 17 years in law enforcement at the federal level and the local level with the NYPD. I have been, watch my Twitter feed or anything else, I've been very careful in my criticism of this sheriff because I didn't have all of the facts out. But now that we see the facts surfacing here, this is deeply disturbing. And let me just tell you what I'm talking about. This is important. On school violence, school shooting incidents, there are different training methods. Some teach an individual officer to go in. Some teach them to wait for a team to show up, but they all taught to go in. I want to be crystal clear on that. That's why I waited, because I thought, was the officer just resorting to his training and waiting for someone? But now that it appears other deputies showed up and still didn't enter appropriately in time, in addition to the multiple missed signals, there is no way this individual should continue in that job. He needs to go, and he needs to go now.
Yeah, Dan, you hate to throw stones. I mean, this is law enforcement. It's easy for us to tell them on the outside how to do their job. We're trying to just look at the facts. There have been reports that there were 3 additional deputies outside of the school in addition to that school resource officer. We haven't confirmed that for sure. Those are just reports. And I'd love to sit down and interview them and find out what protocol was, what they were allowed to do. But if you look at any other business, the top guy, when something like this happens and lives are lost, the top guy usually is forced to step down. Why won't he take any responsibility?
You know, I'm being completely candid. In 17 years in law enforcement and in doing commentary on these matters afterwards, I've never in my life seen a case of hubris so overtake a case of what should have been leadership. I mean, not only is this sheriff out, he's doing commentary on the media where as you saw in that shot there, he's talking about amazing leadership. Amazing. I mean, how callous to the families, guys. This was an epic human tragedy. You're talking about amazing leadership while parents have to deal with the fact that at minimum, one of your deputies failed to respond in time and you missed multiple signals? No, it doesn't work that way.
Missed multiple signals. I mean, there are double figures, multiple signals. Let me ask you this, Dan, before we leave the gun issue. How do you deal with the fact that they visited his house almost 30 times? That he's got this long history of poor behavior, and all these calls are coming in saying he could shoot up a school, he was hurting himself. Having said that, he has a clean record. When they run a background check, since he hasn't been arrested, nothing's there. How do you bridge the gap between an explosive behavior that is primed to kill, poised to kill, but nothing has been done illegally yet? Are you for getting police reports part of the background check?
Brian, yes, I am, by the way. And what you do is you take discretion out of the matter. You do what the Secret Service did when it came to presidential threat cases. You don't just go there and make a snap judgment call based on a conversation. Brian, it's not a mystery that if you show up at the house of someone threatening to be a school killer, that they're probably going to say that, no, I was just kidding. They don't want to go to jail. The Secret Service had the same problem with threat cases. Right. They say, oh, I was just kidding. I really didn't threaten the president. You have to do a full scope background on each and every one. That is what the government is there for and there to do.
Dan, one final question, and that is the President of the United States and even Ivanka Trump yesterday suggested that maybe we need to have a discussion about arming teachers. Where do you come down on that?
You know, Steve, why are our kids subjected to garbage second-class security? You know why? Probably because they don't vote. If this was anyone else, any distinct voting class, this would be a non-conversation. We protect our cash in our banks. That's important with guns. We protect celebrities and singers with guns. The president, aldermen, mayors, everyone else gets firearm protection. What do kids get? Talking points, focus groups, and special interest money. It's an absurd conversation. This is common sense. If they want to arm themselves, these teachers, they should be trained appropriately to do so. But it has to be voluntary.
And my last thought about this is for people to marginalize the president's thoughts on this without considering how that would harden the target is laughable, and it gets me so angry, especially when I consider that coach reportedly has a gun, knew how to use it, and when he wanted to protect the kids, he had to use his body, and he took at least 8 bullets that blew himself apart. How much better would that coach have been if he was able to take out a gun which he was trained to use that he had at his house? That kid would have been dead, and that coach might be alive.
Brian, just ask the criminals. Who do you want? You want an unarmed target, or do you want an armed target? Just ask the bad guys. You'll get the right answer every single time.
Yeah, interesting that the coaches had to rush in and stand in front of the students, and you had officers.
What a hero.
At least one we know on the outside with a bulletproof vest and a gun and didn't go in.
All right,
Dan. Thank you, Dan.